Welcome back to Elevate and Examine. This is the show where we discuss topics that help leaders and creators face the challenges of life and business and help them thrive despite those challenges. I'm Anthony Genzel, founder of e&icreative, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Pastor Natalie Young, who is the founder of the Examine This Moment blog and does so many other things, content creator, just for one of them. How are you today, Natalie? Do you want to add some things to that list?
I'm doing wonderful. I know everyone's probably pretty busy this summer. Just finished coming back from San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh,
So
awesome.
that was like a quick turnaround from West Coast to East Coast. So feeling a little jet lagged, but I'm excited to be here.
Well, you always bring the energy and the great advice no matter what, so we're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm excited.
Perfect. So today we're diving into something that affects just about every business owner, every creator, every leader at some point. It's that moment when your strategy becomes reactive. And it's not in a good way, as we'll talk through as we move forward through the
Hmm.
conversation. It's such an important chat because we've all seen this happen. Maybe we've lived it out ourselves. We've seen others have this happen to them. Things are moving along. You have a plan, you have direction, everything's great, but then suddenly something shifts, whether a
Hmm.
competitor does something, a trend starts taking off, platforms change, social media changes all the time. We all, those of us who have been on X for a long time, especially since it was Twitter, have seen that happen quite a bit. Your,
Hmm.
your sales dip, engagement on your content drops, the pressure builds up. Before you know it, you're not leading with intention. You're just reacting to things and just trying to stay afloat, stay above the water. That's never a good position to be in. So, to help bring more perspective to this topic, in addition to our chat to kick off the show, as always, we have a fantastic guest joining us later. We have Bridget Willard, who is a SaaS marketing consultant. She has deep experience helping brands think more strategically about marketing, about content and communication. You're likely familiar with the content she posts here in X, which is always engaging and valuable. So stay tuned for that. Lots of excellent insights forthcoming in that segment. But let's kick things off with our first segments as always. So this topic really matters because reactive strategy can be sneaky. A lot of times it doesn't feel reactive in the moment. It just feels like something's urgent, something's necessary. It feels like, you start thinking, we've got to do something about this right now. Doesn't feel reactive quite yet, but it's getting there. Sometimes you do need to act quickly, but there's a big difference between being responsive and being reactive. And to me, your business strategy, your content creation strategy, your social media strategy, those things become reactive the moment you stop asking, is this aligned with what we're doing? And you start asking things like, what are they doing? How fast can we copy it? What's that
Hmm.
cool new trend that's going on there? And how can we just do that same thing and make an impact out of it? And that's where we get into trouble.
Hmm.
I think one of the clearest places we see this is in marketing, especially. Company sees a competitor trying something new. They see a trend getting attention. They feel like they have to jump on it immediately, not really necessarily because it fits their audience, not because it supports their long-term positioning, but they're just afraid of being left behind. So you see all these, and you see these all the time. Let's look at the Coldplay concert where the people got caught cheating on their spouses. That every brand everywhere and every person was posting some sort of spin on it, and it just got old
Hmm.
really quickly.
Hmm.
So, I mean, Natalie, I know you've seen this too. Why do you think so many businesses fall into that trap of copying competitors or chasing trends instead of, staying grounded in their own strategy?
Honestly, I have a few thoughts on this. I think number one, there's pressure to keep up. There's this pressure that everyone wants to match what others are doing instead of focusing on their own strategy. And next, I think part of it is the fear of missing out. The fear of being left behind can lead businesses to pursue trends that don't even fit their first mission, like why they started what they're doing. Perhaps there's unclear vision. Without a clear vision, every idea can seem like the right opportunity. So you can be all over the place. There's now this one's big for me. I really see this, I think, so often. I think this is something we'll talk about more later on as well in our discussion is, this comparison over conviction. Too many people are so quick to copy um, because they're comparing who they are to their competitor, that this comparison is leading them in a direction outside of who they really are. And they're willing to go on that route. Next part that I want to bring out is chasing quick results. Many businesses sacrifice long-term growth in pursuit of immediate success. They want like things fast, quick. So the strategy is not like a long-term thought. It's just like, no, it's, they're willing to sacrifice the long-term growth if it's not going to lead to a quick success.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think, also sometimes it's listening to too many voices. Too many outside influences are distracting the vision and the purpose of your pursuit in your business. So, one thing I want to like really like hone in here and just say this statement before we move to the next part of our discussion is that, successful leaders don't chase every trend. They evaluate opportunities through the lens of their mission, their values, and their long-term vision.
Yeah, you nailed it with those things. Sometimes it's one of those, sometimes it's a combo, sometimes it's all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of businesses don't just copy because they're lazy. Some do. I mean, that's definitely a factor, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a lot
Yeah.
of them copy because of the things you mentioned, because they're uncomfortable, because they feel pressure, they feel uncertainty. Sometimes they're not really even confident, especially with newer brands or older brands that have been around a long time and they need a change, but they can't figure out where. They don't really even understand what makes them different. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
trying to stand out, they just borrow what looks like it's working for someone else. And that
Mm-hmm.
typically leads to challenges because the problem is if your strategy is built on imitation, it ends up accidentally. I mean, I would assume most of businesses wouldn't do this intentionally, but it ends up accidentally weakening your identity instead of strengthening it. So if every move you make is based on what someone else is doing, then you're letting someone else really shape your positioning and tell your story. And
Mm-hmm.
that's never good because they're not going to tell it the right way. Long
Mm-hmm.
term, it's also exhausting. It burns you out when you're trying to be someone you're not. And I always, this is a personal branding thing like that I tell people, my personal branding clients that are looking to build their own personal brands. I tell them, you the easiest thing to be is you. Figure out the unique, amazing things about you and amplify those. Trying to be someone else is exhausting, and this goes for companies and their brands as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yes.
seen a lot of brands completely lose their voice because they spend too much time trying to sound like the market instead of sounding like themselves, and sometimes they don't even know what sounding like themselves means. So it's okay. It's important to learn from the market. You can borrow bits and pieces of it, but there's a real difference between learning from the market and being controlled by it. Learning from the market and applying the things that work for you are great, but panicking because you're trying too hard to mimic the market is where your strategy kind of begins to unravel, becomes reactive, and reactive strategy rarely is good. So, you know, to me, one of the best antidotes to reactive strategy is really having a clarity around your long-term positioning, knowing what you stand for, knowing who you serve, knowing what you want to be known for, because then when those things are clear, you don't feel the same need to really chase every passing wave. You can
Mm-hmm.
adjust, you can evolve, you can test things, but you do it from kind of a grounded place more so than a frantic one. And it connects to leadership too, because reactive strategy usually doesn't start with tactics. It starts with emotion. The fear, the anxiety, all the bad things that you're not supposed to let sway you
Mm-hmm.
as a leader. It starts with comparison. It starts with questions like, "What if we're falling behind?" and other scary questions like that. And it's very human, but we need to be careful, and it can lead us into some bad decisions, don't you think, Natalie?
Absolutely. 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 I think one of the things that, I want to bring out even on just the thought of, the urgency that's driving the leaders to, react in this way and make quick decisions. Um, these rush choices can, cause you to uh, burn out and make very poor decisions and even have a missed opportunity or even, not have that sustainable growth. And I think that's the part about what we're talking about that's really important, because if you stay consistent in who you are, yes, you're comparing because you're looking at what others are doing, but don't easily just copy what they're doing. Consider what changes can you make without just this quick response that could affect you in a negative way.
For sure. Yep. That's so true. And when that feeling of urgency takes over, your decision making gets clouded as a leader, content creator, business owner, whatever you call yourself or consider yourself or what the world considers you, you can start making moves that simply are designed to relieve the pressure in the short term, and those end up really creating confusion in the long term. When you're making moves driven by short-term relief, it can lead to making mistakes by pivoting unnecessarily, killing your momentum. One of the hardest things in business is learning that not every uncomfortable moment requires an immediate pivot. Sometimes the smartest move
Mm-hmm.
is just pause, take that moment, ask
Mm-hmm.
better questions like, what is actually happening here? What are we really reacting to? Is it is there a real strategic need here? Are we just reacting out of fear? What will this even mean for us in 6 months, a year or so down the road if
Mm-hmm.
we follow this path? Will it throw us way off course? Will this be a good decision? You have to ask these questions, and taking that pause can really help save you from some really bad decisions. So to our listeners, I'd just say this. If you feel pressure to change direction, before you do that, just make sure you know whether that pressure is coming from wisdom or it's coming from a place of panic, because not every
Mm-hmm.
loud moment deserves control over your strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
Natalie, I think this feels kind of like a perfect place to shift into your segment and dig deeper into kind of the difference between urgency
Mm-hmm.
culture and intentional growth. So I'll shift the mic
Mm-hmm.
over your way. I'll virtually toss it over to you.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I want to bring out just a few points because, again, this is such a great topic of discussion. I want to talk about first the emotional reactions, and what we're talking about. Every leader is going to experience emotions. They're going to have, especially during challenges, any type of criticism or unexpected setbacks. It's often a test of how they're going to respond. How will we respond when we're facing criticism, disappointment, conflict, unexpected setbacks? What are we going to do about facing these things? And these are true feelings. So this is why, as you just mentioned, an emotional response will lead you to anxious ways. So you have to be wise in your response to maintain your strategy. So before responding, I'm just reiterating this point. I think this is so important. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Is my response being shaped by wisdom or by my emotion? And then you have to take time to distinguish this. These emotional driven decisions can damage even relationships that you have in business. They can create unnecessary conflict. They can lead to regret. So this is why it's important that we keep all of this in mind. So healthy leadership isn't about never feeling emotional. It's about learning to steward those emotions well. And when we respond thoughtfully instead of react impulsively, we're gonna be able to continue to build, strengthen relationships, and create an environment where people feel heard, valued, and respected. So, we talked a little bit about pausing before we pivot. Not every obstacle that we're facing in business as a creator, wherever we find ourselves right now, not every obstacle is a sign that it's time to change direction. Sometimes we just simply need to pause, reflect, gather information, and evaluate before making a significant pivot. And then the next point I want to bring out is discernment. We have to keep that discernment in every decision that we're making, because when we're making these evaluations regarding opportunities, recognizing distractions, seeking wise counsel, and making these decisions, we're going to recognize, wait, is this lining up still with my mission, my values, and my long-term goals that I've set in place? And then this part I want to bring out too is protect vision during pressure. So when you're having all these voices, when you're seeing your competitors do better than you at that point, when you feel like people are disregarding where you're going, pressure can tempt you to compromise your values and abandon who you are in what you're doing in business. So keep focused on your vision, guard against distractions, and continue going forward.
Well, wise
Those are my
advice.
main points. Mm-hmm.
Very wise advice, and I think those are good points to take note on as a leader. Emotional intelligence is so important. I just gave a presentation on that a few weeks back, and it was, as I was prepping for the conversation, and I was able to reflect on my own, where I stand on that range of emotional intelligence. And none of us are perfect. We
Mm-hmm.
all have room to grow there as leaders, as content creators. You make some really really important points, and I think at this point, it'd be great to bring our guest in here and get
Mm-hmm.
her feedback on what we've been discussing so far. Throw our traditional questions out there. So let's, without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our special guest speaker for the day, Bridget Willard. Again, Bridget is a SaaS marketing consultant who helps brands think more strategically about how they show up, about how they communicate, how they create marketing that actually connects. She has a really strong perspective on content, positioning, sustainable marketing, which makes her a perfect fit for today's conversation. So, Bridget, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you joining us today. Bridget, are you there?
Thanks for having me.
There you go. We are happy to have you. Thank you so much. I know we've been connected for quite a while here on X, and we've never had a chance to actually talk using our voices. So it's great to actually talk with you today.
Absolutely. And I love this topic because for my whole life, I've told myself, for my whole adult life, I've been telling myself this mantra: respond, don't react.
Mhm.
Respond, don't react. Because a reaction is emotional. And I know it feels like platitudes that are coming top down and high level, 40,000 feet. But when you start feeling those emotions, like Natalie mentioned, when you're starting to understand that, then you're like, okay, let's just take a second and make a plan.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then when you take that step back, you make the plan, and you're not just rushing in head first, you avoid a lot of the problems that pop up when you take that other approach. And I think a lot of businesses, a lot of leaders especially are not equipped with the emotional intelligence to make that shift, unfortunately. So we see the case studies where businesses collapse because the leadership was reactive and more than responsive, and it's just, you have wise words to kick things off there. So I'm looking forward to more of that insight. And as we move into this segment, essentially on each episode, for those of you who've been tuned in to our past episodes, we ask our guests 5 questions that are designed to really help our listeners grow as leaders, as creators, as entrepreneurs. So I just want to dive in and ask you a few questions that we put together that I think you'll bring some excellent insights for our listeners. And the first one I want to start with is, a lot of businesses start reacting the moment they see competitors doing something new. So from your perspective, why do so many companies fall into kind of competitor driven marketing instead of staying rooted in their own strategy and looking to improve from their own organic space?
In one word, Anthony, that would be fear. That we forget that we see this is comparing yourself to your neighbors too. There's an assumption that Steve is doing much better than you because he just drove up in a brand new, whatever your dream car is, right? But you don't know that he had to leverage himself in order to get this job, this new sales job, right? You don't know what their actual business goals are. You don't know what their revenue is. You don't know what their expenses are. And so when I talk to my clients, I always say, there's no point in looking at a competitor or even the visual part of their tactics online because we don't know why they're doing it. I was, and I had the joy of interviewing Rand Fishkin a few years ago about Facebook and is it too big to quit and advertising and whatnot. And he brought up a really good point, something that I've thought about a lot as well, is there are a lot of big brands that dump money or even new startups with their sweet Y Combinator cash that dump money on Google ads, PPC, Facebook ads, Meta, any kind of programmatic advertising, all of that, because their only goal is to grow or die. On top of that, you don't know what they're trying. When you get money in the federal government, right? You have a budget. If you don't spend all that money, I learned when I worked for the government as a teenager, if you don't spend all of your budget, you don't get it. It's the same when a department is trying to justify their budget. So a lot of times they will overspend on advertising. I separate that in my own mind from marketing, because it is a business expense. And it does ultimately reduce their tax liability. A publicly traded company wants to make profit. Their only fiduciary duty is to the actual shareholders, not to the employees, not to the customers. So the dynamic changes. You may see someone who you think is a competitor, but you don't know if those strategies even work, or more importantly, if they care that they work, right? And not everything has a direct, attribution. Like I've talked many times about the parable of 7-Eleven and a Clear Channel billboard of Diet Coke. There's no way of reporting if that subliminal message made me decide to pull into 7-Eleven and buy a Diet Coke. But Coca-Cola is still spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on outdoor advertising. As digital marketers, you and Anthony, like this is like, what? You can't attribute that because marketers always have to justify their jobs to the salespeople. Internally, our competitor is the sales department instead of it being our partner, because what we're competing for internally is budget, resources, employees, time, all those things. So when they're looking outward at the competitor, right? I like to remind them, you don't know if that works. You don't know if they're just trying to burn money. Are their customers your customers? No. Are they even really your competitor? Because maybe you don't even have the same demographic. You might have an overlapping demographic if you made a Venn diagram, but is there enough room in the whole market? You're just looking at something else you can't control. What you can control is internal communication, internal documentation, internal strategies, whether or not you're accomplishing your goals according to your own business and marketing plan. Those are the things you can control. Everything else is just a mirage. It's the highlight reel, kind of like when we go, I was just listening to some old podcasts of mine. I don't know. I got down this rabbit hole and I was like, in the last 10 years that I've been a widow and single and wanting to get married, people have gotten together, gotten married, and gotten divorced. And then I think, how come God hates me? Well, maybe they just jumped too fast, hire slow, fire fast. It's easy to say, why is that person doing better than me? But you don't even know that they are doing better. Instead, focus back on what you're doing. That's the trick is don't look at what they're doing. It's none of your business. Look at what you're doing and stay focused on what your goals are and keep going forward.
Yeah, I think we tend to see that big shiny thing, whether it's an advertising campaign or whether it's, our neighbor or our friend doing something we wish we were doing. And we all automatically assume, and social media is a big, big villain here because you see the highlight reels of everybody. We automatically assume that life is great, that business is thriving. But we don't think about the fact that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't see. Is that advertising campaign actually working? Is it actually appealing to the people that we want to appeal to? We go match that $1 billion spend. Turns out it wasn't even appealing to the people we want to appeal to, and suddenly we just donated $1 billion to whatever ad company we ended up working with. So you're 100% right, and I think human nature, we're guilty of thinking the grass is always greener, but it's certainly not, and we need to look internally first in a lot of ways. So with that in mind, chasing these trends, we see these things happening, we see this value out there. Chasing the trends can create short bursts of attention, but those short bursts don't always lead to long-term value. So when you're talking with brands, when you're talking with your clients, how do you help them discern the difference between a smart opportunity and just something that's sort of a distracting trend that's going to waste money or send them floating off course?
I feel like I've been talking about this subject for 20 years, Anthony and Natalie. It's easy to get attention. Attention is a very easy thing to get. As a woman, it's a very easy thing to get. All you have to do is wear a low cut something or high cut shorts. You can get attention by being silly, ridiculous, all those things. But is it the right attention? So I talk to my SaaS clients and I say, you don't need attention. You need recognition so that you can build trust. You're asking people to spend money and give you their credit card for your vibe coded piece of software, right? You're asking people, this is serious now. And it's interesting because, yeah, it's fun. If there was like just a Slack group with all of us marketers and we could just be in there and get it out of our system, sure. And I'll admit, even I jumped on the two people on top of the Empire State Building, who proposed marriage to each other, and they had this big old flag that had way too many words on it. They needed a marketer to edit that. That's for sure. But the thing is that what did that do? What does that do for your brand? So this goes back to having a marketing strategy, a written document, your brand guidelines that are all aligned with your actual business goals. This is your map. This is your rubric. This is what you check it against. Is this aligned? Yes, no. Is it going to get you further? Yes, no. And it could just be a waste of time and have a neutral effect on your brand. What could you have done instead? I'm honestly kind of surprised that insurance companies, if we've all watched Super Bowl commercials or any kind of sports, you've got all the insurance companies that have all these ridiculous, funny, fun ads. They're funny, but is that what you really want to promote when you're dealing with your home life and auto, right? Life insurance people don't do that. Auto insurance does it because it's relatable that you're in meeting with mayhem like me. You should have picked Allstate instead of letting Evo out. It's funny. It's entertaining because you're on TV. So on TV, where people are easy to click away or not even click anymore, mute and pick up their second, third screen, you have to be entertaining. You have to be. But if you're a local business, I don't think you have the social or brand capital to waste on that. When I was doing social for Riggins Construction and Management, like circa 2006, so that'd be like 2009 to 15, there were a lot of memes and whatnot. And there was a whole thing with Wendy's and McDonald's. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Yes.
It went back and forth and back and forth. But again, these are giant corporations with tons of money. They don't have anything to risk. You, as a business owner, put a second mortgage on your house to keep going because this was during the 2008-9 housing crisis. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough runway financially to even take a risk on somebody not trusting you because humor is very tricky, especially with business. I mean, think about the professional comedians. So I watched it. I'm obsessed with stand up. So I saw a documentary on the improv and everybody said, we did our 4-year degree. It was doing stand up 4 or 5 nights a week at the improv for 4 years because it takes a long time to find your voice. Now, these are professional writers who have writers on their team, right? And you're trying these jokes out in real time and you're getting real time feedback from the audience. In the same way, we do this on Twitter or X. So when I was with Give WP, we would test things out on X. We'd have an idea. I'd ask my boss. He'd be like, let's just do it. If it got the response we wanted, then we would use that for our advertising campaign. Then we were like, okay, let's spend some money on that. And it actually did work. We did that. We started, the Have Fun at WordCamp campaign. We called it the Hello campaign. And in WordCamps we weren't at during Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because it was a WordPress plugin, we spent money just in those geographical areas. And we saw from Google Analytics a rise in sales from those geographical areas for 2 weeks after that 3-day push on X. So yeah, experiment, test, rewrite, iterate. But the goal is still for SaaS. I need you to download my software. I need you to book a demo. I need you to put your credit card in here and become a customer. So you don't, when you're asking people for money, I don't think it's good to be funny. And I didn't mean to rhyme that.
It worked. It worked for you though. It worked. That was a good way. I'm gonna assume, knowing you, that definitely wasn't planned, but it was a smooth transition there for sure. And And I agree. I mean, you think about local businesses and you look at like two competing home remodeling companies. No one's going to be looking for a local, I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. No one's like, did you see the latest feud between John's Home Remodeling and Greenwood Home Remodeling? Those aren't real, so I'm not calling anybody out, but nobody cares about that. So it wastes a lot of time when you should really be focused on how do you get people to take notice of why you're different and how you can help solve their problem better than the other person. I mean, it comes down to something simple. And if you have the billions of dollars to do it, go for it. But make sure that it aligns with your strategy and has a point. I'll jump into the next question in a second, but going to the Wendy's example, I've talked about this several times on social media. They try to do something where they grab onto this kind of angsty persona on their social media channels, and it gets them attention, but the brand is still really failing. They're not doing great. They're losing out to McDonald's and other companies. There's more and more companies coming into fast food, and simply having that social media presence that's funny and makes people laugh is not going to save you. So I'll get
Mhm.
off my soapbox with the Wendy's thing, but it's it illustrates the point that you're trying to make. So I wanted to toss that out there.
No.
Um,
I definitely
so
agree. I definitely agree with you both. And when it comes to food in general, I think, just in general, when we think of different companies, I mean, there's so many coffee shops for that matter. And, I'm not going to name any companies, but, the fact that at one point one company was outstanding and now there's others that are uprising, coming up and doing well. You have to start to consider, what are they doing differently than the other company and why? There's some things that led to lesser attraction to the one that was doing extremely well to the others now that are, coming up. And I know in every community there's like coffee shops everywhere, so
for sure,
j- just wanted to bring out that point too.
100%. Yep. No shortage of coffee shops here for sure. Now I'm kind of craving a third cup for the day. Get me through some evening work.
Oh yes, I love my coffee as well.
So yeah, so now, we've been talking about sort of, throughout this conversation, one of the topics we kind of hitting on is kind of the urgency culture in leadership. Been a common theme throughout the conversation. So, when a company feels that pressure, when they want to pivot quickly, what are some questions that you would urge your leaders to ask themselves and ask their team before making a reactive decision, before letting that urgency and those emotions drive their decision?
Yes, and this goes back to having social media guidelines, brand guidelines, that kind of thing. What problem are we actually solving? What's the evidence? Is this customer feedback or just executive anxiety? What happens if we don't react? Does this support our long-term strategy? Now, urgency can be a super great opportunity. The axiom, strike while the iron's hot. So maybe if you're sports fans, you'll remember the Super Bowl where the power went out. Now, I was not watching football. I was sitting on the couch. My husband was in the other room watching the game. Before he had the opportunity to tell me the power's out, I saw the tweet from Oreo, you can still dunk in the dark.
Yep,
I mean,
they
just
nailed it. They
saying
were
it
on
out
top of it.
loud is giving me chills. That is allowing your team to function within the guidelines that you have for them, these borders, these rules. Everybody gets upset about rules, like we're trying to trap them or anything. But you see this in corporate America. There's corporate policies. Franchises have marketing policies. And that's what makes it a reliable experience. So when you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, or you call CertaPro painters, or you go to Paul Davis Restoration because your place got flooded, there will be guidelines and a way of training that supports the brand, the company mission, and their business goals. So you have to just ask. So if you're a sign company, right? You're a local sign company. You print out banners on the run. You should have done the meme with the two people who climbed up Empire State Building, right? Because that is on brand. You need a banner now? Let's do it. I didn't see any memes from 4imprint. Did you? They missed out because they didn't think about it. They're either not on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or wherever. But that's the thing, is like, there are opportunities where that does fit. It's not always that it doesn't. You have to ask the question. I'm asking people to trust me with their startup baby. I'm not going to start doing funny stuff unless I know it comes from them, because I know I've always worked with startups. They have either gotten a little bit of money from something else, or they have a second mortgage on their house, or they retired and got a parachute from another company and they're using this money to bootstrap their company. To me, when I'm being paid as a actual technician, doing the work, to me, that's like a huge responsibility. And we haven't even started talking about the audience. When you have an audience, that's a huge responsibility. You whether it's a podcast, whether you're a comedian, you're the Marvel people with all the comic book movies, or you're a pastor, your audience is your responsibility, and audience is a responsibility. And then you peel back another layer. Now you have customers. What are the pain points that our customers are going through? If they're sitting around thinking about how Spectrum went out and now they can't even work at home, and then you see Spectrum Internet doing some kind of meme about whatever the latest trend is, you're like, can't you guys figure it out? Like, I need a service guy over here and you guys are making jokes. It's the perception. It's the perception. The perception creates reality for the customer. And so marketers have to do SWOT analyses. So, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats? How is this going to affect me? What are people going to think about my brand if I start doing a feud? Are they going to be aggressive toward me? What if I have pushback on their writing, on their content, on their website design, on this? Are they going to be aggressive with me, or is that going to rub me wrong? You have to look at everything that you're doing and how it reflects upon your brand, your company, your employer, your culture. Like, everything is so, I have a part-time job at TJ Maxx and I just got moved to the front. So I'm supervising the cashiers. And as somebody with autism, it's been very difficult for me. And I have to remind myself, my face, which in my room, it doesn't matter what my face looks like. I'm writing, I'm tweeting, I'm doing my client work, I'm getting stuff done. I'm being judged on deliverables. But at TJ Maxx, running the front end, I'm on a stage, and the stage has two audiences. First, my front line, my cashiers, who can see my face, see my reactions, and number two, the customers, because they're all watching you, because they have to buy their Halloween decor in July. It's just like, it's a must. It must happen.
It's very important.
It must happen right now. And why don't you have this thing? And we have a policy for this reason. You cannot be like congregating up at the front, because even though those other employees have other things you need to do in other areas of the store, we always step aside, because to the customer, it looks like there's a lot of people who could be on the register, even if they're not register trained. So their perception, which is your branding, is their reality. And it's your job as the head of marketing, as a business owner, as a leader, to protect the leadership, the company, the values that you've built.
You're so right. Perception is so important, and marketing really has an opportunity to form a really positive perception, a really aligned perception that shows that you are there for them and you understand that audience, or it can go the opposite direction. You mentioned the Xfinity and the internet scenario. You see a lot of brands that they're just, they're out of touch with what's going on. They're out of touch with reality, and they post these things that are just insensitive given the situation, given what's going on, and they get called out for it. And people are listening. They're watching. They will leave you and go to the next company if you make a mistake like that. So 100% keep tabs on perception and make sure that you understand how people are viewing you and your team with every move you make. So yeah, so once a brand kind of crosses that line, they've already made the mistake. They've moved past proactive, they've moved past responsive, they're fully in the reactive phase. What are some practical steps that a brand or a person can take to slow down, reset, and really rebuild from a more intentional place to get back on track?
Yes. So one of my business mentors, former partner, Jason Cannell, would say, what's been done cannot be undone. Or as my husband would say, you can't unscramble an egg. So you move on. There's nothing more that you can do about it. I really get a lot of inspiration from sports. And for a hot minute when I was in San Antonio, I was watching the Atlanta Hawks. And Trae Young was interviewed one day after a game. Basketball is a long season. It's been a lot of games. It's a lot. And how are you dealing with not making those shots? Blah, blah, blah. Are you thinking about this? Blah, blah, blah. The reporter asks him, he goes, no, I got a game tomorrow. I don't have time to think about that. Right? Even play by play, you can't ruminate. You don't have time. Time is a luxury. So the thing is, I always say, stop, drop, and roll. I'm Gen X. We learned it from Dick Van Dyke for fire prevention. You catch on fire because you're wearing pajamas in the 70s that didn't have fire retardant on them. We grew up feral. We grew up so feral. But it's stop, drop, and roll. It means just take a minute and then go through your SWOT analysis. Does this align with your brand? Ask somebody who won't agree with you. And this is the biggest issue I think leaders have, is that they don't align themselves with somebody who is free, has the psychological safety to speak their mind. If you follow and make a kind of a court of suitors around you that always say yes, you're never going to grow. You will be insulated and protected from the truth about what's happening in your organization, the truth of your experiences with your customers, your user experience, customer service. You have to ask people who are willing and have the psychological safety to tell you the truth. But if you're a one-man shop, I think, oh, that would be really funny. And sometimes I just do it because I get it out of my head, and then I'll send it to the team in Slack, and then we'll be like, ha, ha, ha. And then that's it. We got it out of our system. It's never going on the internet,
Yeah.
And we try not to make anything mean, but still it's like, is this pushing the brand forward or bringing the brand back? And you have to look at that, not just from a self-awareness standpoint, but what would your enemy say?
Yeah, I like that Trae Young example in sports. I use a lot of sports references as well, and that's a great one because you fail a lot as an athlete. If you let that failure keep you down, you're going to end up losing 5, 10, 20 games in a row. You're going to have a terrible career. Hall of Fame's out of the question. But in business, in sports, whatever you're doing in life, don't let that thing impact you so negatively that you don't get back up and try again. So, I love that example. I'm also a Sixers fan, so just got to throw out LeBron James is joining us. So,
well, the thing is that life up through college teaches us that 90 to 100% is acceptable. But that's not, if you go around the world thinking you have to have a 90 to 100% success rate, you graduate and now you're in the real world. That's not reality.
Yeah.
The best baseball players fail 6 to 7 times when they're at bat. 6 to 7 times. That is a huge failure rate.
100%.
But those are the most successful. You would think that the Spurs could have figured out how to practice free throws so that they didn't lose the championship this year.
Great example.
You're getting paid millions of dollars. It's like, I get you're not doing your threes. You're under pressure. There's no pressure on a free throw. There's only yourself. But you have to have the mental fortitude and the discipline and the practice to do that. That's why it's so important for knowing who you are, understanding what your purpose is, defining the actual problem that you solve, listening more than you publish. This is what more people need to do. It's the same as listening more than you talk. And being recognizable is more than just wearing the same funny glasses or the plaid striped suit like Anne Hanley does. Like, there's characteristics that make you recognizable, but it's the behavior attached to what you do. It's your deliverables as a brand, as a company, that are attached with the affinity that you feel. So you have recognition. Recognition leads to trust. Trust leads to affinity. Affinity leads to loyalty, and loyalty leads to sales. That's all way before keywords, before anything else. Like, if you're doing reputation management, which is kind of an overall theme of this subject, if that's not on brand for you, you wouldn't do it. I saw an interview with George Costanza, the Jason Alexander who played George Costanza. And he said he had a really hard time working with Larry David on Seinfeld because he would say that George would never do X, Y, and Z. This is out of character for George to do this. But the goal of Larry David was, I don't care as long as it gets a laugh. So a serious, well-trained actor, Jason Alexander, wants to make sure that the character has integrity. This character would never do this. This character would do that instead. But the person who was writing the show, producing the show, and keeping it going for, I don't even know how many seasons they had in the 90s, was, I just want a laugh. So the business goal of that brand was to get people laughing every episode. He did not care. And you have to understand that you, as the person who's a practitioner, your opinion doesn't matter. Your clients' opinions matter. So even though you think so-and-so or this and that would be super funny, what does your client want? What do their clients want? You need to really embrace that methodology. So it could go either way, Anthony and Natalie. I just feel like sometimes we think it's so, I didn't want to say like you should never be funny. You can be funny. Lots of people are funny if it fits your brand guidelines and your business goals.
Mm-hmm. Or even the moment for that matter, right?
Yes.
For sure. Yep. Being in the moment and the right moment and having the right goals and the right direction in mind is so important. You nailed it. I love all the examples. The Seinfeld example was excellent. Trey Young, I love it. Sprinkling those in.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that amazing info, we want to ask one last big question that really rounds it all out. And as with every episode, one of our goals, or our main goal really, is to kind of help people become wiser and more effective in business and leadership and grow as content creators. So you've done all of this. You've been very successful. from your perspective, for someone who's listening right now who wants to kind of build stronger and kind of have a more calmer, intentional strategy, what are 5 of the top things they can start doing today? What are your 5 top pieces of advice along those lines that you would offer them?
I would definitely start doing. There's not enough doing. There's a lot of course taking. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of staff meetings. There's not enough doing, because just like, let's just stay with sports. You have to have the at bats. It doesn't matter what you did as a rookie. It doesn't matter what you did when they were drafting you. It doesn't matter what you're doing during those things. It only matters what you're doing while you're there. And all of that, what you've done during the season, once the finals start or the playoffs, whatever sport you're talking about, it only matters the last game you ever played. You either won that 7th game out of 7 or you didn't. And your whole career is based on that. So if these are people that are making millions and millions and millions of dollars, then give yourself some grace. And that's why I like X or Twitter the best, because it's a very responsive, quick moving medium that allows you to kind of test things out. So number 1, don't be afraid to fail. I know it's a cliche, but like I said, baseball players, they don't always hit it, but that doesn't mean they're not good. Number 2, change your whole mindset on what success means to you. What does success mean to you? What do you want to be doing? Number 3, learn from people even if you don't like them. I used to watch a show called What Not to Wear, and then it became another show later. But in the 90s, it was with Trini Woodall and another lady, I always forget her name. And you would be like, don't wear that shirt with those pants. But you don't know until you try. But that combination wasn't necessarily bad. It just didn't work on that lady. Like for me, when I was, after being a widow and trying to find myself again, I was like, you're kind of subject to these trends when it comes to fashion. The fashion comes top down and you just get whatever everybody produces and everybody's copying everybody, right? That's fast fashion. So I realized, bathing suits don't fit me right because I have a long torso. I have to have a bikini or a tankini. I have to have high-waisted pants. And once I started wearing things that fit my body, take the analogy, your business goals, then you will do well. What do you want to do? Do I want to build the websites every day? No, thank you. I will happily send you somewhere else. So know what you want to do. Understand yourself. Number 4 would be, and learn from other people, even the people you don't like. And number 5 would be, don't give up. Never, ever give up. I'm loosely quoting Winston Churchill because it's so easy to go, well, I tried this. And this is what all my clients say to me too. I tried Twitter. It didn't work. Just because you have an app on your phone doesn't mean you know how to use it for business reasons, right? This is the siren song of, I have an app, therefore I'm a marketer, or what everybody likes to say in corporate culture now. Everybody's part of marketing. No, they're not. Get out of my kitchen, right? So you're like, there's too many cooks in here. Just go back to support where you belong and we'll figure this out, right? So that's the thing is you really have to know what works for you. And that means you got to look in the mirror. You got to answer the hard questions. And if that means you need to go to therapy or have a business coach, then do it because you will thank yourself later. And if I could add number 6, it's say yes to yourself. A lot of people I talk to are women. They're like, should I apply to speak at this conference or that conference? Should I want to be a guest on a blog? Should I want to be on this podcast? And I say, why don't you just say yes? Well, what if they say no? If you don't apply, you've already said no to yourself. The worst that can happen is they say no. Say yes to yourself and do it.
I love that.
Do the work.
Yeah, I love that. We have to take chances, we have to take risks, and we have to bet on ourselves. We don't get the opportunity. If we don't take the chance, it's definitely a no. So why not reach out? The worst you can hear is no, and then you move on to the next opportunity. I agree.
And
So
if you fail, get back up again and try again. Maybe just do it differently or just, figure it out. But I love when you said, don't ever quit. That is like one of my favorite mottos.
I agree, and I think we talked about that. That was a big part of our episode 4 last month. We talked about that, getting back up when you're knocked down. It's so important. Bet on yourself every time. And I'm glad, Bridget, that we bet on you delivering today, because you really did deliver some awesome advice. I knew you
Yes.
would. We really appreciate you joining us and the insight you brought to unpacking this topic. It's one of those conversations that a lot of business owners and leaders they really need right now, because it's with everything and all the distractions out there, it's so easy to drift into reaction mode without even realizing it. So before we let you go, I do want to give you an opportunity. Can you let all of our listeners know, and those who will catch up on YouTube later once this goes on YouTube? Can you let everybody know where they can find you online besides X, of course? And we know you're here, but where can they find you online? Where can they learn more about what you do and your work?
You can always go to BridgetWillard.com, or on X and Instagram, I'm Bridget M. Willard.
Awesome. Please give Bridget a follow, everyone, and check out everything else. She's got a lot of great content online. You can learn a ton. Excellent show today. And to everyone listening, thanks for spending time with us as always. We really appreciate you being here and joining us for these conversations every month. We'll be publishing this on YouTube, as I mentioned. It's as soon as we click end on this conversation, it'll be available to listen to the recording right on X, right here on X. And then the show will also appear with recaps on the e&icreative website and on Natalie's Examine This blog website. And I will say that Natalie's much quicker to get that blog out there, so you'll probably see it first on her site.
Yeah. Thank you.
We encourage
Yeah.
you to join us next episode, August 20th, at 3 p.m. We have a really, really special guest, and Natalie, I'll introduce really quickly, but I'll let you jump in and say something if you want to. But Joel Young of No Load. Joel co-hosts a conversational podcast about PlayStation, Star Wars, Marvel, Disney, gaming, comics, movies, all kinds of what would fall under the category of geeky stuff. I think a lot of stuff that I love personally. But most importantly, he is the son of our amazing host Natalie here. So Natalie, you want to drop any kind of accolades there?
Well, I'm definitely super excited to have Joel as our guest next month, and I don't want anybody to miss that. It's going to be a great conversation, and definitely his podcast is very geeky. Sometimes he'll even just have some gaming going on while they're having a conversation, podcast style. So you don't want to miss that. Again, that's at No Load Time, and he co-hosts with his partner Obed. So he'll talk more about that when he comes on, but I'm super excited. It's going to be my son next month. So I don't want anybody to miss that. It's on August 20th at 3 p.m.
Going to be a fun one. And we had a fun one today with Bridget, and it's great talking to you as always. And for everybody listening, you can follow us at Anthony Genzel or at Examine This Moment, or preferably both. And
Yes,
thank you
thank
again for
you.
listening, and we'll see you in August. And thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, Anthony. And thank you, Bridget, for being with us. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.